I've got a couple of cases that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm actually rebuilding my website. I was hoping to get it all up and ready to put all my ghost images up, but that will be up in the next week or so. I'm working on a case of a missing twin girl, and it's a very old case. I actually hope, due to the floods, because I feel she's down near the riverbed, so I'm hoping due to the flooding up there, when the water levels go down, maybe we might have some evidence that will come to the surface, because there's a whole lot of big boulders and rock around the area where I feel she is.
Tell us about the TV. Now, I was explaining to everybody that you're very well known in Australia, and you're the go-to girl when they have a television program about psychics and mediums. How did you get started with that?
The first show that I initially was on was called Scream Test, and I was joining the Psychics Association, and there was a letter that came to me, and I didn't sort of do much about it, and then I was listening to the radio, and I actually changed stations because I didn't like music, and then the station I turned onto was the one that was advertising for the show as well, so I kind of took it as a sign, and I applied for the show. They had 30 different people that they picked, and they said that they had Australia's most haunted locations. All of them that they did choose were in New South Wales, and then I actually got down to the top 5. So we were taken to different sites. The site I was taken to for the first show was the closed Maitland Jail, and it's one of the most haunted and disgusting jails in Australia, and we were taken in black hood to put on our heads, and we had to sit in a van for over an hour. They took our cameras and phones and watches off us, and then they just pulled us out of the van and then took us to various locations in the jail and locked us in there. We had a video camera, and we had an EMF test, temperature gauge, and I got the first cell I got was a suicide cell. So what they did, they played a video of all the horrible things that actually took place in the cell. Then they turned it off, and you were just sitting in. Then the ghosts in there had their way with you. So it was a pretty horrific experience.
So you actually saw and felt things in there?
We were in there for probably over 7-8 hours we were in each different cell or in different locations. And I used to just film and just talk to the camera, because at least I could have a light on, because it was quite terrifying. After I finished the show, I actually had been physically attacked by the ghosts, and I had strangulation marks on my neck that stayed there for 18 months.
Good heavens. And you went back for more?
Yes.
You're a true, my God, this is amazing. Did you have any after effects apart from the marks? The marks on your neck?
Yeah, I did bring home 2 attachments. I ended up going back to the jail and staying overnight, getting rid of them. I think it was a very big learning curve for me then. It made me realise that, yes, spirit can attack you. It doesn't always. It's more likely that when spirit's more positive, but when you're put in such a negative place, and also you're quite fearful because you don't know what's going to happen to you. You're sitting in the dark, hearing about the worst serial killers in Australia that had been sitting in that cell or in other locations. So your mind starts to wander as well. So it is frightening. But I think I needed to have that experience so that I can teach other mediums and other psychics how to protect themselves, just how to lift their vibration, really.
So what would you do differently if you had to go into a situation like that? Well, as I imagine, you'd go into those kinds of situations all the time with your detective work. How do you protect yourself?
Well, I do a lot of meditation before I do go into these types of situations, but also calling in my guides and trying to lift my vibration or my frequency. So it's very hard to say, don't let fear overcome you, because, we are human beings and we do become fearful. But I think it's more about going with the right mindset, and even when you leave, to clear yourself properly so that you don't bring anything home with you. I think that's more important. Whenever I do any even ghost tours or go to any haunted locations, whether I come home at 3 a.m, I'll always make sure I have a shower, because the shower for me is my way of sort of washing off any negativity or any spirits. But before I leave the location, we also ask for any spirits that are around us to, we try to send them into the light, actually, to sort of let them go so that they don't become, attached to anybody in the group.
This is really interesting. So you had first-hand experience that we do have earthbound spirits around.
Oh, definitely, yes. Quite a few years back, I used to go into Gladesville Mental Hospital grounds and also to Callum Park, now the university, the Sydney College of the Arts, and there were locations in there where there was a lot of earthbound spirits. So there would be a group of us, and we would go in and open a portal to actually ask any lost souls or earthbound spirits if they wanted to go to the light. We would open a portal for them to be released.
Fantastic. What did you have to do to qualify to go on Sensing Murder? Because that's been a very big name show in Australia and New Zealand. Can you tell us a little bit about your adventures with Sensing Murder?
With Sensing Murder, they had heard about the police work that I had been doing. So then they asked me to go in, and they gave me some photographs, and I didn't know anything about any of the cases, just gave me some black and white images and just asked me to tell them what I saw. Then they really didn't say anything, and then about a month later they rang me and said that I'd been chosen to be one of the mediums on the show. All of the cases that we worked on were interstate. So there was, I worked on there was three in Victoria and one in Queensland. And what they would do, they would fly us straight down from Sydney, usually to Melbourne, put you straight into studio and do your hair and makeup, and then give you a photograph and just ask you to look at the photograph and tell them what you saw. You had an hour in the studio, and whatever you said at that point, you were not allowed to change. So you just told the producers what you saw, and then that was it. The next day they would take you to a location. Sometimes you would be blindfolded and they would take you to the location, and you would have to come up with what you saw, whether it was names, photographs, or like descriptions of people, pieces of jewelry, and just different clues for the case. With Sensing Murder, they actually would have 3 mediums that would work on each case. And then what they would do is get us all to film separately. We were not allowed to speak to each other at all while we were working on the case. So we were filmed independently. And then they would pick the 2 psychics that they felt actually correlated with the most similar information. And then those 2 psychics or mediums would be the ones that would go to air, and the other one would be cut from that episode. It was very interesting though. I did go under hypnosis for the Mr. Krill case, and I actually was cut from that episode because they didn't agree with what I was seeing. And so they ran with 2 other mediums. And it's funny, to this day, I've still been working on that case. And I ended up working with the retired head of the task force. And it was when I wrote my book, Never Alone, I was very frustrated because I knew the information that I had was correct, even though they told me it wasn't. I just knew in my heart that it was. So I thought if I wrote that chapter in the book, that one day someone would contact me and I would work on it. Hence, I was very, very lucky to work with Colin McLaren, who is a very well-esteemed author and retired detective, and we've also worked on the Sue Neil Fraser case down in Tasmania. It's been a kind of a roller coaster ride of working on these cases. I did do one episode over in New Zealand, but it was a bit difficult for me at that stage because my children were younger and they wanted me to go and live in New Zealand, and I wasn't prepared to leave my kids behind at that stage. But it was certainly enlightening. I think the hardest part for me working on that show was that afterwards, after it aired, people would come to me and they'd give me information and they would want me to follow it up. But the producers of the show weren't interested in that. So I had all of this information coming to me and I couldn't do anything with it. I would try and ring the relevant police officers, but they weren't very happy because they were quite put off by the way the show was put together. So the police and the producers were not really on side. So it was really difficult as a medium getting all this information, not knowing. Plus, I had death threats. The thought, people had said they'll come after me. And sometimes when you know too much, it is very frightening because I'm still a civilian. I'm not a police officer. And the police are not prepared to protect me either. So it's a really fine line to work with, this kind of thing. People think it's all glamorous, but it actually is not.
What would you say to the people who say that Sensing Murder was all staged?
Definitely, well, I can verify that none of the mediums or psychics were told any information prior. Everything was kept very secretive. We were all kept separate. We were not allowed to look anything up. Again, all of our phones, computers were taken off us. So we were flown straight from Sydney to Melbourne in most cases, put into studio. An hour in studio, you got to hold the piece of jewelry or a photograph, and they wouldn't tell you anything. And then after that hour was up, whatever you said on camera, you were not allowed to change. So even if you develop more information afterwards by going to the location, or sometimes for me, I develop information during the night. I might dream about it or, get more information that will flow through. I was not allowed to add that to the show, which was very frustrating because sometimes I think there's many pieces of a puzzle and that you need to sort of tune into something to actually add pieces to that information.
And were you able to find the location of the event yourself?
Yeah, definitely. One case, which was up in Toowoomba in Queensland, it was at a place called Murphy's Creek, and we were just driven out, driven on a road, and they just said, "Where do you want to go?" And I could hear the girls. There was 2 girls that were murdered very brutally, and I'd tuned into one of the girls' jewelry. I could hear her telling me to stop. We got out of the vehicle, and I actually ran straight into the location. As psychometry is one of my gifts, that's one of the things I found. The psychometry of the actual murder scene was extremely strong, even though it had been 20. Well, it had actually happened in the 70s, and we were there in the 90s, late 90s. So it was, over 20 years later. But when I walked in there, I could actually see the girls. It has to be one of the most haunting and brutal murder cases I've ever worked on, and that energy was still there. And when we went in there, there was actually logs that they had sat on when they had this. They had like a bonfire and a party in their mind of attacking the girls. Those logs were still there, and so were some of the empty beer cans.
If you're in a place like that, let's say you buy a property where something like that has happened, what can you do to clear that energy? Can you ever clear it?
Yeah, well, it's difficult. A lot of people wouldn't even know when they go to these places. I mean, I think you can go in and, call spirit in and open like a portal to ask for any of the residual energy or any of the victims if they're still stuck to the location. You can ask them and guide them to the light. Sometimes even like in old battlefields and things, people will go to old locations or haunted locations, and that residual energy is actually imprinted into the walls of a building or actually into the earth. I find if some, people buy a house and it's been a divorce settlement and they think, great, I got the house cheap, but, and it was, it's mine now. And then they end up becoming, having marital issues. And a lot of the time they get divorced because that energy is still in the property and they haven't cleared it before they moved in.
You were a contestant on a program called The One. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I remember Victor and I watched it and we were horrified at some of the stupid things you were asked to do.
It's terrible to put people against each other. I think as spiritual beings, we should be working together as one, not being the one. But I thought it was going to be different, and it was difficult because they would have a Reiki master, they might have a massage therapist, they did have some mediums, they or had a lot of mediums or psychics, but people had different gifts. So some people are better at clairsentience than they are, clairaudience. So we all have different ways to work. Psychometry is one of my specialties. And what they would get us to do, they would give you there was 2 instances. There was one you had to find a helicopter through psychometry, and we had to find a person on a train that was a living person. So for instance, the helicopter one, I went last. Every time we ended up having to do a challenge, they put your name into a hat and my name always came out last. Just, I don't know what it was about me, but anyway, that's how it worked. And so hence one of the other psychics had actually held the same item I had prior to me, and he got lost. And so all it was just a plastic name badge on a lanyard that we had to hold, and it was owned by the helicopter pilot. So there wasn't enough energy in the thing in the first place. But then the fact that the most recent person who had held it before me had got lost, so I actually was picking up that energy from that. And the other one we had to use was a backpack, and we had to find a person along a train, like in a number of train carriages, and we had to pick somebody. And it's very difficult because the person wasn't distressed. They were sitting there trying to not be conspicuous. And really, to try and test our gifts, they were pretty stupid tests.
We're getting a lot of people interested in your psychometry. Can you teach psychometry?
Psychometry is a Greek word meaning soul measuring. So psychometry is holding a piece of, like, it can be jewelry, it can be clothing, but clothing, because we wear it, it gets washed. So the energy doesn't stay within it as much. But say metal items, so glasses, a ring, watches, things like that, or a photograph as well. And I'm actually trying to set up some workshops at the moment to do via Zoom. I'm just trying to work out the logistics of how we do it, because normally we'd do it in a group and we'd hold pieces of jewelry or photographs. So when you hold something, it's like it will talk to you. You'll see through your hands. Some people, if they're right-handed, will be a receiver in their left hand, and vice versa. If you're left-handed, you'll receive in your right hand. So when you put something in your hand and you hold it, just shutting your eyes, you can actually get the item to talk to you, and hence it will connect you to the previous owner or the owner that the current owner. If it's a historical item, it may show you things of the past. Once you tune into it, you can smell things, hear things, feel things, taste things. I've been doing classes with students probably for the last 20 years, and it's been incredible to see that just by, we usually have been doing just like a one-day course. By the end of the day, everybody can read a piece of jewellery, and also through photographs. So it's interesting when you hold a photograph and you look at it, nobody will know who the photo is of, like the owner does, but then they swap photographs to someone else in the class. And when you look at it, you don't know whether they're living or deceased, but it's interesting that just after looking at it and just sort of honing into the photograph, the eyes, you know, are the window to the soul. So you'll be able to gain information about that person in the photo, or it might be about the feeling. So it might be that the memory of that place. In the background could be that the family holiday house, or a location the family would go to, or it might have been the last place you saw your loved one before they passed away. So all of this information will come through. It usually comes through in bullet form. I tend to use that as well when I work on police cases. So it's a really wonderful tool to utilise and to open up your mediumship and your detective skills as well.
So if any of our people wanted to learn psychometry, is it just a matter of practice, a matter of trying with a group of others, say?
I think it works better when you're with a group of other people, because your vibration or the frequency of the group actually amplifies. And because you're in a like-minded situation, I feel that Spirit likes to work with this and teach us. When you, with psychometry, yes, it is about practice. I call it our spiritual GPS. So once we start to exercise that muscle, it actually strengthens. So, you know, it's just another doorway to actually get us into spirit.
So what else do you teach your students?
I teach people about clairaudience, so clear hearing, and I'm sure many of you out there probably suffer tinnitus or have, you know, ringing in your ears either permanently or, you know, inconsistently, because Spirit tends to use that as a frequency to come through. I teach clairsentience. So clairsentience is about clear feeling, and it's about becoming connected to that part of yourself. Claircognizance, we would all have that going off anyway. So that's like that light bulb moment that goes off above the top of your head. You know, sometimes you might be thinking about something and then the answer spontaneously comes, or you're thinking about someone you haven't seen for a while and suddenly they pop in and you see them up the street, or they call you on the phone. Or you might think of someone and you think, oh, they're feeling sad today, and you ring them and they go, oh, I'm so glad you rang. I was really not feeling very well. So, you know, it's teaching people how just to, I suppose, look, we all have these abilities. It's just a matter of being aware of them and connecting to them, not thinking that it's your imagination or wishful thinking, because a lot of us tend to think that we overthink things, or that message you're getting is actually, you know, just something you're making up in your head when you're not.
So tell us about your involvement with angels. I know you are an angel lady.
I am. Many years ago, I used to be a graphic designer, so I've always felt angels around, and I've always loved them. And, you know, when I find a feather, it makes me very happy. And I'm sure many people out there, you find a feather and think your angels are nearby, or you might get signs from lady beetles or butterflies and, you know, clouds and things. And I was watching a show, Surviving Death, the other day, and they said, how come everybody sees a butterfly and that's their mum or their grandma? Like, why is it always a butterfly? But I think it's when we become more connected to the symbols and signs from Spirit, then it's like it makes it a presence to you. Like for me, a butterfly is my nana, because we did a butterfly release for her after she passed. But when it comes to working with Spirit and angels, it's, you know, I feel that we all have a guardian angel, and they always are around us. And I remember sitting on my computer just here where I'm sitting, and my angels started telling me little messages, because I was feeling a bit doubtful about myself and feeling a bit negative, and they started giving me little positive affirmations. And they said to me, well, why don't you write them down? And it was like, oh, I haven't got time for that. And they said, no, you have time, you make time. So I sat down and I wrote all these little sayings down. And some were sayings that we already know, but there was a lot that they channeled through me. And then they said, well, you need to make them so you can share them with others. And being the graphic designer in me, all I was worried about was what the front of the card was going to look like. I wasn't really worried about the messages. So here I'm trying to find this picture of a feather, which I sort of found one similar to the one on the Quilton toilet paper. So that's a bit sad, isn't it, to think here I've got these angel cards with a feather that looks like it's off the toilet paper. But anyway, that's how it works. But so I handmade all these cards. And so there's 52 little cards. They were like little tiny cards in a deck. And I handmade them all, laminated them, cut them up, and I used to give them to clients. So every time I did a reading, I'd get them to pick a card at the end. And then now my publishers, Rockpool, they actually have published a real deck in a real box. So these are So this is the little box. These are just the little ones.
Oh, lovely.
So they've got like a little furry little feathers on the front, but they're all little affirmation cards. So they
Very beautiful.
you pick a little message for the day. So I've got these little ones. So these were the first deck, and then I've got pink ones. But then I have these big, beautiful angel cards, sets of these. So these are the guardian angel reading cards, and these are all colourful, and they've got messages.
Oh,
Lovely. And people can get those from your website. You've got a shop on your website, haven't you? Tell us about your spirit photography.
I've been doing spirit photography since Scream Test because I was really frustrated because they kept saying that we had, part of the reason for us to be on the show was to capture images of spirit to prove there was life after death and that there was ghosts. And all these things happened to me, but they said they never got anything on camera. So I was really frustrated. So I decided I was going to start taking my own photographs. So I went back to all of the haunted locations myself, and then I started taking photos. And this was on SLR camera at that stage, so film camera. So probably out of every 36 shots, I'd get about 5 photos. And at the time, my husband was a bit annoyed because he'd say, you can't take pictures of the kids, but you're taking photos of abandoned toilets and old historical sites, and the poor kids, you're wasting money on these ghost photos. But I started to capture images of spirit, and sometimes what we call orbs. So they look like full moons, like circles. So this is a fantastic book if anybody's interested in orbs. The Orb Project. I would find that they would be orbs, and then sometimes they would turn into ectoplasm. Sometimes I got images of ghosts. Then the digital cameras came out, and the first one I got was a Sony Cybershot, and it was a 3.5 megapixel, and they had an exhibition called Stranger Than Truth, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's photographs were going to be there, and you weren't allowed to take a camera in, but I snuck my camera in because I had this vision, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, that if I went he would show up on camera. So I actually went in and took some photos, and he did, and I got 4 shots off before they sort of kicked me out because I was taking pictures and I shouldn't have been. Then I started taking more photos. I'm trying to get them all up online for you. I've spent the last 3 weeks doing it, and I was having computer issues, as you all know, so I didn't get them up. Yeah, I started, so that with the 3.5 megapixels, I started to get images in. Polaroid shots, you can get them on the old Polaroids, but it's very difficult to get the film these days, and it's very expensive. Digital cameras are wonderful, but I've got a Canon EOS 7D and an 80D, they don't pick up the spirits the same way. But your phones will do that. The Apple 4 upwards has been really good. I just got the Apple 12 Max. It's not very good for spirit. I don't know why. The 6 was one of the better ones. I find if you put it on video, and the Samsungs are really good as well, but if you put it on video, you put the light on, you can actually film spirit. So you might get spirit actually walking through. You need them a bit darker than what we've got here. And I'm finding when I've been doing a lot of Zooms lately, they love the Zoom camera, or the computer camera. So they are reflecting, and it was funny, the other day I did a reading for someone, and there was orbs running across their face and everywhere, and then they were around the back of me. It was like they were having a orb party. So start to have a look at your cameras. A lot of the lower sort of megapixels tend to pick them up. My daughter had a little Nikon 5 megapixel. It got some of the best orb images I've ever seen, and ectoplasm as well. So you don't have to have the best camera. I think it's more a matter, the Carl Zeiss lenses tend to be able to pick spirit up, but the higher end, cameras, I don't know, they seem to be too sophisticated for orbs to be captured on.
Debbie, I was absolutely fascinated by what you said about the sound in the ears. I've never been aware of tingling noises in my ears. But what I have noticed is every time I meditate, it's like a roar in my ears. How can I use that? How can I develop that into more than just a roar in my ears when I meditate? And that's the only time it happens.
Yeah, so what spirit will utilize is what's called white noise. So, and the tinnitus. So that's the frequency. They're telling you they're ready to speak to you. So what you might be needing to do is, okay, when you start to hear that, if you can consciously ask them, just say, okay, I'm aware of your presence. I know you're here. Like when I'm talking to you, my arms are all buzzing everywhere, so they're all around me. So you just say, I'm aware of your presence. I know you're here. What is it you would like to share with me? So whether or not you say, is there a special word you would like to give me for today? Or is there an affirmation? Or is there a message? Because once you start to do that, it's just, they're telling you they're here, and it's kind of working out what's the best frequency for them to communicate with you on.
How does water, from a physics standpoint, remove negative energy off the body? And two, I am shocked at how the abuse you have taken, trauma, bullying, trapping you by the media. Don't you ever reach a point? I mean, this is a community of love here, but don't you ever reach a point and say, look, enough is enough. I'm not going to allow you to abuse me anymore, treat me like this, and just tell them no, and just stick it.
I understand. Well, first of all, the water for me is my white light. So I imagine that when I'm in the water, it's my physical way of washing off any negativity or stress. So it's more for me personally that's how I do it. You know, it's like a force field, and then I say to my guides, it's my force field, and then I wash everything away. So, and plus, water is a great conductor, I find. So I find when things too much, I go swimming in the ocean or in the water, and that also lifts my vibration. Now, as for the media, I think, yes, I do get angry with them, but then I also feel somebody's got to sort of prove that people like us do exist. And I feel if I tell them to stick it, it's only they're only going to win. So I feel I don't get mad. I think just get better. So it's not about getting even, because then you're lowering to that. I think it's more a matter of utilising the media in a positive way so that, yes, we can get our work out there, and to encourage others like us to be strong and not, you know, people are always going to have a go at us. It's like the old witch hunts, isn't it? But I think it's more a matter of education. So, and not all media experiences have been negative. I have had a lot of positive ones as well. So I think it's using my voice in a positive light, and also to allow others to do the same.
Actually, two brief ones, but one of them is just to say with cameras, what happened was I took a picture of my own face. This was a number of years ago, and it was really distorted. There was a number of them, and I took a picture also in my living room, and I saw flashes of light, and then in the balcony, I actually saw a serpent-looking kind of thing, and I ended up getting extremely sick. I almost died a few years after that. So the thing is, I guess my comment is sometimes I don't know what that was. There's still an energy that occasionally shows up in the kitchen, and I do the white light and I do a lot of prayers, but what do you do if you catch something on film? You know what I mean? Like maybe you take a picture of somebody else's face, and it's obviously that there's something that is etheric, that is, you know what I mean? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's good to try and clear the house as well, you know, to try and get rid of it. It's hard because sometimes it could be the location of where you're living is why energies or entities may be connected. Sometimes you're a portal as well, so spirit will see that you are aware of those energies, and so they want to make their presence known. I think the most important thing is trying to lift your vibration. I know I keep saying that, but I think it's about look, the lightness always is stronger than the darkness. So I think it's through meditation, clearing, and calling in your guides, calling in your angels. Like when I wrote my angel cards, it's about an angel of whatever you need, an angel of protection or an angel of white light, or an angel of clearing. I think of it because if everybody asked Archangel Michael to help us, I think that poor man would be extremely busy and run out of time. So I kind of think of it that way. But yeah, I think that sometimes we do have these messages with you being sick, you know, when you have these energies around you, it's kind of like it's connected to your vibration. It's hard. I have a beautiful kinesiologist that I see regularly, and he helps me to clear anything that's attached to me, because I find sometimes it's hard to do it on your own as well.
I would like to know from Debbie, what exactly is an orb? I hear about it. I see pictures of them. It doesn't seem like a very attractive prospect to end up in the afterlife floating around in a little orb. Is it just one manifestation of spirit, or what is it?
An orb is spirit energy. From my own personal experience, an orb is how our souls can move from one spot to another. So I've seen orbs go through walls or through windows. But when enough energy gathers, it actually can turn into ectoplasm, then in turn manifest into solid form. So I don't think we're all just floating around as a bunch of orbs. And there's also different colours. So sometimes if they're more on an ET level, they might be reds. You know, if you're getting black ones, it's more negative sort of energy. When we're getting the blue ones, or they can be blue or white. Sometimes they may even have faces in them. There's, you know, I've seen a lot of images, and I've taken images where they will come, you know, they will turn into faces, or you might get ones that have a similar, say for instance, I'm just using this cover of this book to show, so say for instance there, a lot of the time the same orb will have the same features within it. Sometimes I have little chunks out of them, or different energies, but I tend to find I might get a photograph and there'll be 20 or 30 orbs in the image, and the next image there'll be a few orbs, and then it'll start to mist up like fog, and then it'll turn into a full-bodied spirit. So I think that is just our way for us to move from one spot to another. So I don't think you're going to be stuck turning into that. So when you want to come and visit your grandkids, I don't think they're going to be seeing you just as one of those.
Thank you.
So couple of questions. Did your children get your gifts?
Yes, they all do have my gifts. They weren't necessarily accepting of those, my eldest one especially, but now he sort of works it. My middle son, I was pregnant with. All of this happened. He's my most psychic child, and he does a lot of artworks now, connecting with spirit. But yeah, he's very, very tuned in. I think he could be better than I am, to be honest. My daughter, she has it as well, but she gets a bit nervous of it, but she's very good with the spirit photography as well. They tend to like her. So I just say to them, they don't all have to be mediums. It's more a matter of tuning in and using it as a positive, as a guiding light. You know, if something feels right, do it. If it doesn't, don't. You know, just embrace what part, if any, they would like.
The second question was following up on Gloria's question about tinnitus. Sometimes I'll get like a specific tone in my ear, which is very, very clear.
Yes.
And is that also something about a presence?
Yes. Yes, I do believe that it is. You know, sometimes you might even hear things through the wind, or say the washing machine's vibrating and you might hear that frequency. They will utilize white noise to come through, but they will also use it, you know, different frequencies in your head. I have tinnitus in my right ear. I had a diving accident. I want to be a dive instructor, but I blew a hole in my ear, so that's permanent. But I also have tinnitus in my left ear in a different frequency. But at first I found it very annoying, but I find now it's them trying to say, hey, Deb, I'm ready to work with you. So it's time to play with them.
Yes, thank you. I just pressed it. It goes up and down. When I feel a presence, for example, how do you know if it's your guide or any other spirit?
Well, sometimes it's a difference of the frequency when they come through. When it's your guide will always give you a loving and caring energy around you. Sometimes if it's more a presence, you might feel cold or feel a bit uncomfortable. For me, though, when I do get affirmation or confirmation, from spirit, the hairs on my right arm will always go up. So that's if I'm doing something, or they're sort of saying that they've arrived, but it's a positive thing. As I know you live in a more of a historical location too, and your house could be a bit of a portal. So I kind of feel it's a little bit more hard to discern with yours. I think I'd just be calling in my spirit guides and guardian angels as protection. You know, if you're feeling that energy around, and if that changes the frequency, then that means your guides are there. If when you call the guides or angels in, and then it's making you feel uncomfortable, then that's telling you have a presence in the room, and it's not a guide.
The orb project is the classic on, you know, it's scientifically written, so not over your head, but it's the classic, it's the standby.
Good evening, Debbie. In the experience that you've had, have you ever had the victim warning not to proceed any further because it may cause problems for the victim's family or you and your family?
Yes, I have had that happen. Sometimes it's hard when it happens. It's more for them to tell me not to proceed because I will be in danger, and then not always the families will be understanding of that. So that's why I tend to only work with the police on the case, because it becomes too personal if you have direct connection to the families. They're more worried about having an outcome than worrying about what could happen to me. And they don't mean that to be in a bad way. It's just sometimes people just want to know what happened.
Right. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to ask, this has happened to me lately, and that is sometimes when I close my eyes, it's like I can see a portal into another world where I actually see people. Could be at another time. They don't even know I'm there. I don't know if that's good or bad, or if I'm looking at spirit. So I just want to know if you've ever heard of such a thing.
The same thing happens to me, and initially when I first started to work with my mediumship, yes, that's part of it. It was more like, for me, I would feel pressure here in my third eye, and then I would, it'd be like a black, purple, blue, green swirls, and then it would be, I'd hear a popping sound, and I would more or less pop in, and I would be in a location. So I think, yes, you're opening up spiritually. Sometimes it can, for me now, I can do it when I'm awake, but before it would have to be through meditation or through dream state. Yeah, I do feel that, yes, you are starting to open up. So that portal's there, but it's up to you whether you want to go through and work with it or not.
Thank you. Debbie, can you tell us about your book about psychic development?
Yes. I have a book called Awaken Your Psychic Abilities that I wrote some years back. Initially, when I first started to explore my psychic abilities, there weren't really any books out there that I could sort of find to assist. And so through frustration, I'd buy, as you can see, I've got lots of books behind me, but I actually wrote that book, the Awaken Psychic Abilities book, because I wanted to help others understand and have sort of a quick go-to of how to do things. So each chapter takes you through the different psychic clairs, so clairaudience, clairvoyance, signs from above, psychometry, and there's exercises and meditations throughout the book that will teach you about white lighting and psychic protection, and little bits about spirit photography and orbs. So it's kind of goes through it, what I would teach if you were with me in person and I was going to do a workshop with you. It's more or less what I would go through in the class. So it's in the book.
Have you thought of doing any online workshops?
Yeah, I'm in the process at the moment of trying to work something out. So it's just trying to work out the logistics, how to do it, and actually how many people in the room. I think probably could only have 8 to 10 in the room because I want everybody to be able to ask questions. I'm just trying to work out whether we can swap photos with each other for someone to work on. I don't know. I'm still sort of trying to nut that all out at the moment.
And of course, that we do have a group that's been going very successfully on physical mediumship online. So they've been getting manifestations in individual houses. Craig's here. Craig, would you like to just tell everybody a little bit about what you've been getting?
Yeah, we've been having wonderful evenings. We meet every Wednesday evening. We have a group that's been with us for about 3 years now, so we've developed some maturity. And within that group, then the people in their locations are getting breezes and taps and raps and even a couple of things that have been knocked down on them, and a lot of good manifestations. So what we're trying to do is to show that anybody can start a circle anywhere, and the circle can be successful because they'll honor that on the other side. And so, Debbie, that's what we've been doing. Debbie, incidentally, I have one of your episodes in one of my books. It's the one with Dwarfy and somebody named Dwarfy. Do you remember that? But anyway, it's I know your work, and I'm just very impressed with what you do.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
Debbie, fascinating as always. All of this information goes so far to help all of us recognize the signs. One of the things I found interesting is sometimes I'll get a tone and it'll change frequency right in the middle of the tone. It'll go to a higher frequency and then lower to a different frequency. So that was very interesting. That was some good feedback, and look forward to seeing you in May.
Well, thank you so much. I just feel so blessed for you all to have me here. So it's lovely to be with such like-minded people. It's a real pleasure. I was so excited. I was just so worried with the computer mucking up. So but we overcame that one.
Yes.
You've got a techie on your team, I'd say, who sorts it out for you.
I will have my new website up and running by the time we have the next meeting. I'll get all those images up because there are a lot of interesting and different types of photos that I'm sure you'd love to see. And I'd love to see yours as well. So you can email me and send anything through if you feel inclined to as well.